Well, greetings, everybody. Once again, welcome to the Rec Poker Podcast. I am your host, Steve Fredland, and delighted to bring to you today another conversation that I had with a number of recreational players a couple of weeks ago. And here we were specifically talking about how do you maximize value. And so I think a lot of the beginning players especially will enjoy this conversation as we talk about situations where maybe we leave value on the table. And those can be the differences between making a deep run and just barely cashing or not cashing at all. And so over the long run, those things add up. And so I think you'll enjoy that conversation. Before we get into that, just want to give a really quick shout out to the Free Poker Network, who is our sponsor for the Rec Poker Podcast. It's a really cool concept where you can go and play in a bar. A lot of these bars run multiple nights, multiple tournaments each week. And you can, based on how you do, you can collect points, and then those points can get you into the regional tournament, which can get you into the state tournament, and ultimately get you to Las Vegas, where you can actually play in the World Series of Poker and for other cool prizes. And at the end of the day, this is a free tournament. You can play each week for free. A great way to meet people, a great way to support the local bars in your area, and also a great way to work on your game. So check them out. Pete Bushy, Brooke Leiter, a really good crew there, and I think you'll enjoy being part of that. A lot of the relationships that I've built in poker started with playing in Free Poker Network and then grew from there. So I credit them for giving me an opportunity to play without hurting my bankroll as I was learning the game. And also I want to give a quick promo for All In for Africa 6, which is coming up April 1st. This benefits the Against Malaria Foundation, and we've raised in our first 5 about $50,000 for the Against Malaria Foundation and for clean water projects in Rwanda and East Africa. And so I encourage you to check that out. Great prizes. We're going to have at least 40 bounties, some of them with cash prizes at as much as $200 or more. It's a $125 buy-in. There are optional rebuys and add-ons for $60 each. Go to the Canterbury website and get more information on All In for Africa 6. Would love to see you there. And if I see you, mention that you listen to the Rec Poker Podcast. That would be very encouraging. So with that intro, why don't we listen in on the conversation we had about maximizing value. So today, talking about maximizing value in our hands. So we've talked about all these weird different situations before, talked about some other concepts, but the issue today is we've got a made hand. How do we extract as much value as we can? How do we balance that with, fear, in a large regard of being, re-raised or betting into something huge or whatever. So I guess the first question I had for the group, and thanks to y'all for being here publicly, first question I have is, what are some of those situations where we feel like we maybe left value on the table? You leave a tournament or whatever and you think, I didn't maximize that situation very well. What are some of those, whether it's specific or just kind of general terms, what are some of those things where you guys have thought that?
I've definitely had a number of occasions where I've done that, where I've had a big hand and I just bet the hell out of it. And then I blow everybody off the hand. And it's like, what am I doing? I should be... What you need to do is you need to think about who's going to call and with what. Okay, so now you should, instead of just saying, I got a big hand, I'm going to bet, you got to say, I've got a big hand, what can somebody else call me with? Mm-hmm. And then put that range out there and try to figure that out and then size your bet accordingly. And I never do that. I get the big hand.
Because the emotion?
I go crazy.
I think another thing you got to do is be consistent all the time. So it doesn't matter what, where you start. You got to start consistent and follow through consistent. If you only do your, whatever it is, half a pot bet after, then stay with that until you kind of see, if you think you got to get somebody off because he's going for a river bet, then you got to do whatever. Mm-hmm. My problem is probably the opposite.
Go on. So what do you mean?
What do you mean opposite?
Slow playing it too much, or
playing it, like I should rhythmically, and then getting hit on the turn or the river by somebody just staying in, the way people play.
So do you end up feeling afterwards like that was a bad play, or you were just unlucky? You were trying to maximize value.
Yeah, I guess you got to just think it's unlucky because you should try to play it correctly throughout the tournament. Every now and then, there's times where you do get the beat like that at the end. What are you going to do about it?
Right.
Could you have done something? Oh, hopefully, but that's probably my most.
The whole trade-off between being results-oriented and what was the right play, sort of thing. Anything else? Any other?
A lot of it depends on like the board texture too, because say we have an overpair on the board, but the board is really connected. 2 to a suit, 3 to a suit, or 2 to a straight, etc. Those types of hands. I think you have to approach it a little bit differently. You have to try and get those draws out of there, but at the same time, you don't want to just shove all your chips in, scoop the pot there, but maybe it is better in that scenario. And then kind of watch how the next cards come out. Say it is a connected board, but then the turn is the deuce of clubs, something that doesn't affect anything. Then you should still feel good. And at that point, do you try and push them off the hand, or do you try and keep them in? That's the question, right? And that's what I always struggle with.
Yeah.
I think that's always a question that I look back on. When I'm on my A game, I'm asking this question, but rarely am I on my A game. But if the question is, what do I want them to do here? Like, what am I? If I bet, do I want them to fold or do I want them to call? That's the question I should be asking. Like, I did the same thing like you, Rob, where man, I had like ace queen of hearts in the flop game, like queen something with 2 hearts. And I just shoved. And I'm like, what am I doing? I really wanted everybody to fold. It was against where you were in that hand, actually. That one, it was a big hand, whatever. But I was like, what am I doing? Like, if I thought that was the best play, then that's fine. But I hadn't really thought about it. I just like, well, big hand, and I'm scared of Brian. I'm just going to shove. Like, well, really, I got that board so locked up.
Yeah.
So I should be asking, if I say, well, I actually want people to call, then what's the maximum I could bet that'll get the call?
Exactly.
Or do you try and get other people to bet?
Yeah.
Well,
that's
one of the things. If it's a really connected board and you see there's straight draws and flush draws out there, you've got, let's say, top 2 pair. You get down to the river, all of the draws missed. And in that situation, a lot of times I'll check for value.
Right.
Because
Sure.
I'm trying to induce the bluff.
Exactly.
They missed all of their draws. The only way they can make any money off of this is to bet at it. Or they're going to think I missed a draw and then maybe bet something that's weaker than the hand I have. So
I was going to say, you got to read the people too, right? Because there could be a super aggressive person that's in with you. Let him, like you said, maybe check at the end if it doesn't hit. I mean, I did that yesterday in one of the qualifiers and won a huge pot. But, because they're aggressive, they're probably going to bet. And they probably don't have. So.
Yeah, checking for value, right? That sounds like an oxymoron, but that's interesting.
It's absolutely true, though. Absolutely true. Because I had in one of the MSPTs up at Grand Casino, I ended up turning a full house. Now I bet the flop because I had a set. The board paired. Now I got a full house. I bet the turn, and then I come out betting, and people are calling me, and I come out betting the river. What am I expecting them to call me with? I got this locked up. I mean, nobody could have a better hand unless they happen to have pocket 7s.
Right.
And I bet it out again, and like half pot or whatever it was.
But sometimes
sometimes
it works, sometimes
Yeah.
it doesn't, right?
Right.
But at the same time, what John
Exactly.
just said is very, very true. If I had checked, this guy, he went into the tank forever before he folded. And that tells me that he had at least 2 pair. Maybe he had an 8. There was an ace on the board, so he might have had an ace with a pair of 7s. And he went in the tank forever wondering what I had, and then he finally folded. Had I checked and showed weakness, he could have very easily come out with a bet. And then I jam over the top of him, and I get more chips, I get more value.
Yeah, it's tough
And
because
I miss that value.
but if there's nothing worse than you have a big hand, you check the turn, they check. You check the river, they
Well,
check.
the thing is,
if you got pocket aces, you think, well,
yeah, but would they have called your bet anyway?
Well, that's the question, though.
What do they call with?
But they might have an overpair that they see that board and they're just like, I'm just going to check this down because
Yeah, I
I'm
was
scared.
wondering that.
But they might have called a bet.
Usually on the river, what you're talking about, I usually could keep consistently betting.
Yeah.
When sometimes I wonder if I check. And there has been a couple times I
Exactly.
did check and they just don't do anything.
Right.
Very seldom do they.
Yep. So, but maybe it's a bet sizing thing too, because I'm typically I look at try to get half the pot in, and maybe a little less than half the pot at the on the river if I have a hand.
try some crazy bet.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah.
all in.
Well, no, I mean, I've done that before. I've had quads and I've just shipped like 3 times the pot because it just looks like you're just stealing and you get called. You're like, oh, whoops. And they probably cut their pocket threes because they think you missed with your ace queen or something, you know? So it does work sometimes, but it's tough. I mean, and even some of those situations where the huge hand gets huge hand, you feel like, man, if I would have bet more, I would have got paid. And I don't know. I mean, so it's like, for me, it's always a struggle. Like, what are the overriding principles about that? What am I actually... because the answer we have joked about earlier, it depends, right? What should you? Well, it depends. It depends. It always depends. But like, what are those key principles? Is it primarily what type of player they are? Is it putting them on the right hand range? Am I putting them on draws? Am I putting them on, a big pair? I mean, what sort of things sort of really motivate that? Is it my own table image? And I know the answer is yes, all of those things. But I'm not smart enough to be able to process everything at the table. Like, if I have a big made hand, what should be those 2 or 3 things I'm really thinking about?
Well, one of the things that, when you're talking about individual people, I kind of get an idea. There's certain group of people out there and that are very much into this pot committed idea. And so taking advantage of that and going, okay, what can I bet? Because they're going to go, no matter what they have, they bet because they have so much into it already, or the pot's this size, and you can take advantage of that. You just come over, a little bit and get that extra bet out of them.
Especially depending on the stack.
So certain, there's certain people that just seem like they're always looking at that and they won't get away. And I try to, if I don't think I have it, even if you only bet them in, if I'm gonna fold. If I think you got me beat. But there's a lot of people that are like, what? Why would you do that? There's so much in there. You have the chance.
For me, it depends a little bit, too, on whether it's a cash game or a tournament. In a cash game, I'll try to just get whatever the optimal amount of money is. You can make bigger bets, and I don't care whether I make that money this time or the next time I make the bet. You have your whole lifetime to average it out. For a tournament, I want a little less variance because I've got to get a little bit of value out of my hands for this tournament. If I make double my chips up but don't manage to cash this tournament, it does me no good. So I want to be a little bit more consistent in tournaments, whereas I'm willing to take more risk in a cash game. In other words, if I were to overbet the pot and I'm going to get paid off, so on average I'm going to earn more, I'll do that in a cash game. Whereas I would rather make sure I get some this tournament in this particular...
Put less at risk.
Right, right.
How do you guys feel about, you talked a little bit about having 2 pair in the river and that sort of thing, but like just the idea of value betting, sort of your above average hands. Okay, so you got king, queen, the flops, king, jack, 3, something like that. Forget about the position and all that stuff, but just in general. And you bet and somebody calls, then it's a deuce, you bet and somebody calls, and then a jack comes on the river or something. Or maybe that's not a great example, but this idea of like, all of a sudden you're scared that they were calling you with middle pair or something. And I think it seems like the really good players that I've met will be able to figure that out and will like still bet the river for value. Because maybe they think they're up against 9s or 10s or something like that. I don't know, but like I tend to get more scared of betting for value on the river in fear of being, they check to you, and I'm afraid of being check raised. Or, I know it's pretty standard for most people, and for me too. I'll just check down medium hands. If I have showdown value, a lot of times I'll just check that down. But there are hands that I feel like are good enough where I could have gotten some more value from them. For one more bet, they would have paid that off. And I feel like I'm leaving value on the table in exchange for the fear of being re-raised or being set up somehow. And do you guys struggle with that at all? Or?
I think that's the big difference between someone who's good at poker and someone who's average at poker is when...
No offense taken.
No, I'm talking about the average player myself. I check down way more than I should, but it's those professional poker players that say, okay, they're going to call me with worse. I should value bet here. And where I look at that, I go... Maybe I should just check back because
I've got showdown bet.
Yeah,
right. That's what I do. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's knowing that line, and that's what I struggle with a lot. Is when do I bet for value? when do I bet as a bluff and when do I just check down because I'm in between their polarized range type stuff.
Well, that's the thing that you mentioned range. I think you're looking at one specific card. You're thinking, well, if they got a jack, they're going to raise me.
Right. I mean, I know
Right.
I had a good chunk of their range.
Right.
But yeah.
But you, instead of playing against their range, you're playing against that one card.
The
When
fear
you
of that one card.
Fear of that one card.
It's
When
thinking,
their whole range they could have tens, they
Oh,
could
yeah.
have queens.
No,
you know,
that's the thing. I look at their range
Could
and I
have
say I'm
eights.
probably ahead.
Yeah.
But you're right. It is looking at the whole range, but then it's
And
the
in playing
fear
against
factor
that
is
range.
that
Exactly.
sliver
You're
of that.
playing against one
I-
hand on
Well,
that
it's
range.
the fear. I'm not playing against the whole range. I want to bet against the whole range because I have value
Yes.
against the range. But then
Well,
it's
so then
offset
you
by
should
that
be betting-
fear
you-
of that
so-
narrowness of
right.
that range.
So you should be betting against for the value
I
of the
know.
range.
But then
So
they're
knowing it includes a jack.
But how sick is it when you get re-raised there, though? It's such
But
a sickening
if
feeling.
you get, is it though? If you get re-raised and you're confident that that means they have it,
yeah,
they've just given you all the information you need to make the right play.
Which is the fold.
which is the hero call.
That's your problem. I love you're afraid of the jack and you'll make the hero. Well,
I know.
That's where you need to look at it and say, okay, here's the person I'm playing against. If they raise me, what am I
Right.
going to do?
Right.
If the answer is if they raise me, I'm clearly going to fold, then making a bet is not a dangerous thing.
Do you think about that in advance? Like that when that's what I know the great players think about that in advance. Like if I bet here and they raise me, I'm going to fold. Or are you more reactionary? Like
I do. So for me, I play against a table of 9 people, and I'll maybe have a good line on 2 of them. So with 2 of them, I'll be able to say, yes, here's what I want to do. The other 7 people are just sitting there blank faces, and they could be just random people, and I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
right.
But so sometimes I do. It really depends upon the zone. There is a huge, for me at least, a huge variance when I feel I am playing well versus when I'm just kind of going through the motions. So I think when I'm not playing well, I'm probably one of the worst players you've ever seen. And when I'm playing at my best, I'm competent.
I'm adequate.
Yeah.
Did you just describe me?
you describe everybody in this room. Sure.
But the point about having a plan ahead, I watch a lot of Jason Somerville on Twitch, and he, talks through his thought process when he's in a hand. And there will be points where he says something like that. He's on the river, and he goes, well, if they raise on me here, I know I'm beat. And they'll raise on him, and he'll still go into the tank and think about it. And he thinks about it well, though. Like, he will go through that process of, okay, what would this hand do? What would this hand do? I beat these hands. Would they do this? Would a missed flush draw really raise on me on the river? And you can see him go through that thought process. So I don't think it's having an immediate plan and always sticking to it, but having a plan, knowing what you're likely going to be doing, and then still considering it on the river. So I think there's got to be a little bit of balancing of there's no exact, I have to do X if they do Y.
Yeah.
Again, all situational, right?
You're looking for the size of the bed and the physical tells and all that stuff, I suppose.
How
But-
long did it take him to raise?
But I think I would feel less of a gut punch if I would think that through in advance. Like if I would think, okay, I'm going to bet here and if he raises, I'm just going to fold. It wouldn't feel as bad because you I don't know, for some
But
reason
it's
you
still
put the bet out
hard.
there, all of a sudden somebody makes a big bet on you, you're like,
Also, if you're playing well and you're confident, then folding a hand when you know you're beat and you really know you're beat doesn't feel that bad. What feels bad is folding a hand and
Right.
thinking, I wonder if I was beat.
yeah, for the next hour.
Right, exactly.
And now you're in your D game.
Right, exactly. Now you're pulled off your game. Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting to hear. So Somerville on Twitch is he like playing online and then?
Yeah, he
just-
plays
that's
through
sweet.
Poker Stars, and then usually just one table at a time. He's on a delay, so people can see what cards he has. But
Okay.
he'll talk through his hand.
Is he
always
playing
has
tournaments or are you playing cash?
almost always tournaments. He does play some cash though.
So what about
I mean, sometimes they call too. I mean,
Yeah,
all
no,
these people never
Right.
make the right call, right? But like you said, you just got to feel good about what you did, and at least take the time to think about it. So many players that, if you're not thinking about a move, at least to a point, I mean, that's a problem.
Yeah.
You probably shouldn't
Right.
be playing this game.
Well, because even that question, do I want to call? Do I want to fold? Like on a river value bet sort of thing. Do I want to call? Do I want to fold? Why am I actually putting chips in here? I think that's some people don't really think about that when they're betting bottom pair. Check to them on the river and they bet bottom pair. I don't even know what they're looking for. They don't want to call.
Yeah.
Anything worse than that's going to be a fold. But you do it anyway, and that's kind of the river bet like you were talking about, like the bet sizing of that. Now I know I've been always much more. I just want to be consistent with everything I do, and I'm starting to go. Do I? I don't know. I mean, I like the idea of it because it looks fishy, but I also like the idea of saying, okay, if I want somebody to fold, starting to ask what's the minimum amount I can bet to get that fold, so I'm not putting as much at risk. And if I want somebody to call, what's the maximum I can bet to get value?
Right.
And I think about a river bet like that, like what's my point of betting if I'm betting it for value? Really thinking that through and maybe going against my idea of being consistent. And saying, what can I get them to call?
Do you really need to be consistent against the players that we play against normally?
That's a fair point.
Because most of them aren't paying attention to what your bet sizes are. They're just reacting to what they have
It's
in their
a bet.
hand, and it's their bet, and should I call it or not?
Mm-hmm.
Or how many chips do I have?
Or if you want them to call you, you hem and haw a little bit, and then you bet, and then you got a better chance.
Hollywood.
That they're gonna...
But most recreational poker players don't need to worry about being too consistent.
Right.
I think that would, if you try and do that, I think that would be a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Concentrating too much on that, I think you should be concentrating mostly on what is the best play at this point. I mean, if you start playing way more, then you probably should be balanced in what you're doing in different situations. But I think to start off, most people just need to be thinking about what's the best decision in this spot.
Because one of the things that gets, sicker than being check raised on the river, which is sick enough already, is feeling like so I'm telling you all I hate that, but I'm going to set y'all up. But when I feel like I wasted chips in that spot, like if consistently I want to bet 2/3 on the river. So let's say the pot's 10,000, I put in 7,000 or 8,000 chips, and then I got re-raised for 60,000, I got a fold. And I think, did I really need to, what if I bet 3,000? He's probably still going to re-raise me, and then I can get away from it, and I only spent 3. What if I'm betting? Especially if I feel like I'm betting for value, like that king situation. I feel like I'm betting for value. I'm going to bet 3, and I'm willing to fold if he re-raises. I don't know. Because if he just called me with King Jack or whatever, King 10, and I'm ahead of him, I wanted to get the full 8,000. But when I get re-raised, and what I really feel sick about is that I put in 8 instead of, I probably could have put in 3 and gotten the same information. But I'm giving away value on those hands where I get called. And I don't really know, I'm sure there's a mathematical way to think about it, but I don't really know how to think about those spots.
It depends a little on who you're playing with. I know there's one particular person I play with that I will make an underbet on the river and like 10% of the pot. And every single time that will result in a raise. And just coming over the top, like repotting it. So if I have a great hand, then it's obvious I make a really small bet. That's going to happen, and then I'll get it. And it's been happening for years, and it has always worked. So
you can't see John smiling really big over here.
It's one of the, you just have to know who you're going to play with. If they're the type of person who's going to full or raise you no matter what you have, and then you can do that type of thing. You need to figure out how much value can you actually get out of this hand. There are some hands you cannot bet the river. If a hand is worth 2 streets of value, then decide where you want to get your 2 streets. Sometimes I'll check the turn to then evaluate and then get more value on the river.
All right, so now switching gears a little bit. So I'm sitting here, I'm in position with pocket 7s. I raise pre-flop and I get 2 callers. The flop comes ace 10 7. Checks to me. I know it all depends.
What are the suits?
I know it all
Tell me the suits.
I'd say just a rainbow board. Let's
Okay.
just say. But I raise with 7s. I hit my set. I had 2 callers pre-flop, and there's an ace 10 on the board. So you've got all the aces are in play. They hit. 10s are in play. They hit. King queens, queen jacks have gut shots. What just generally maybe those are the questions, but what kind of questions?
Okay, if you're
would you have?
if you're the pre-flop raiser, do you always c-bet?
Me?
Yes.
What do you think? I'm trying to reduce it down to about 80%.
So wouldn't you slow play this?
Well, that's my.
No, you shouldn't.
See, I would
See,
bet.
that's
what-
I would bet.
I would
That's
bet.
kind of what you're getting at. Is
I would
if I
have- yes.
normally continuation bet, why would I not?
Continuation bet at that point.
If you don't, it's going to look fishy.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well,
people are
particularly if you're the last to act. I mean, money doesn't get into the pot unless you put it into
exactly.
the
Right.
pot. And at that point in time, you have a stranglehold, but there's also enough out there that people could have. You don't have a lock on the board. Other people could
right.
think
I mean,
they
two
have the
people could
last
have
hand.
Someone
Could have ace 10 and have
open
um,
ended straight draw.
exactly.
two pair.
Yeah.
And if you put money in right now, you have a good chance of completely getting their entire stack because top two pair is a huge hand.
Right.
Just not as good as bottom set.
But of course, I'm going to scare off all the pocket eights, the pocket 10, or pocket jacks.
No.
Yeah, but how much money are you really going to get from them?
Eventually.
The other pocket pairs are going
Yeah.
to stick around for one bet. They're going to stick around for the continuation bet because they're going to say, well, he saw an ace, so he's just continuation bet.
If you have nines there, you're
Mm.
staying in?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gone. I'm out of
With
there.
ace 10 and a C bet and you're gone?
Yeah,
The guy could be raising with king queen.
he could be.
So the point
But
is,
he also
I
could be
didn't
raising
bet.
with ace king.
Depends on how big
ace
the
queen.
so you can
continuation
either
Yeah.
take the
Jack.
choice of I'm going to make the bet and lose the eights, or I can not make the bet, let them stay in the pot, maybe get a hand that beats me.
To jack show.
And
Yeah.
so then they're putting money in. They're never going to give you money when you're ahead. So why keep them in the pot?
let them catch up.
Well, and beat you.
Well, potentially,
Yeah.
potentially.
Well, no, if the case of the pocket pairs, pair of pocket nines in that
Yeah.
case.
That's a real
it-
problem. Yeah.
Right,
What-
exactly.
What really feels bad at that point is you check and everybody checks behind,
Mhm.
and you feel like, oh god, now
Yeah.
I could really get in trouble.
Oh, I thought about this when you sent out the topics in advance, and I completely agree with John. You have to bet out here because the hands that are going to give you value, the rest of the streets, you want to start getting value from them now. You don't want to check and reevaluate on the turn and check and reevaluate on the river, because then you're just losing out on value, I think. Sure, they could have queen jack here and go, yep, not this time, I'm not going to chase after my king. They could have pocket sixes and go, well, completely missed, I'm done. But those hands are done regardless. If you check, you're only giving them another card to, if they have queen jack, hit that king, and then now they got the stranglehold on you. And likewise with a six, maybe they bank a six, but then that's good for you.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it could go either way, but I think you just have to start getting value from those hands right away on that flop.
Mm-hmm.
So do you feel the same way if you're not the first, or if you're not the last act and been checked to, though? I mean, if I'm the first and there's two other people behind me and I get that three.
Well, it depends on
That-
if you expect them to bet or not.
Right.
If you're the pre-flop raiser, they expect you to come out betting. They expect you, no matter what the flop is, they expect to see a bet from you because you're the pre-flop raiser. So if that's the case, then I'm going to make that bet. Now, if I just called somebody's pre-flop raise with my pocket sevens and it hit my set, I'm going to check it to the raiser, expecting him to bet, and then I'm just going to call that bet.
Okay.
Right? Because I want to keep him in. I don't want to raise him off the flop. I want to keep him in. And then I'm going to hope on the turn when I check that he bets again, and then I'll probably try to come over the top of him at that point in time and show my strength.
So what's the difference there? Like if you're just calling him, and the king or queen could still come, and he could straight up.
Well,
He
yeah.
could be betting king queen.
Why you can't?
But in the first
You
case, you don't
can't.
really want to take that risk. Oh no, I'm just asking. Like in the first case, you don't really want to take that risk, and now you're saying
No, it's not
I'm
that
kinda
I'm
willing to take the risk.
I'm saying I want to put money in. I want to get money
Get
in
money
the
in the pot. Okay, so
I'm
that's
not
the-
worried about a king coming off and a
So
guy.
that's
having
the
queen
driving
jack.
force. Is how do we build the pot?
Yeah, how do we build a pot? How do we get value for our value hand? I mean, we got a set of sevens.
So you're sort of, if I'm filling in the blanks, you're sort of looking at that as a flop to set. If I go broke, I go broke. But how do I
No,
get?
not necessarily. I mean, it's.
But you're
gonna
trying to build a
depend-
pot.
I'm trying to build a pot.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to go broke.
Well, no,
I'm trying to
you're
get
trying to get
value.
broke.
I'm trying to get value. I'm not going to be afraid of somebody getting a gut shot on me, hitting a gutter on me.
But
If I
that's-
do that, I wouldn't bet ever. I'd
Well-
sit around and wait till the river and
But
go,
on the
look, I
flop-
got a big hand.
But on the flop that said we wanted.
No, if you're worried about that, wouldn't you bet big to get rid of them before they hit?
No. I'm not
straight
worried
to the
about a
flush?
gutter. I'm hoping the guy has ace king or ace queen.
So why don't
You
you
know,
just
so I'm
re-raise him
gonna
with your
get
sevens
that.
right then?
Well, you're
On the
always
flop. Yeah.
No. Because you're how many streets of value are going to get with a set if he's got pocket kings?
He had ace king or something.
If
though.
he's got ace queen, if
Yeah.
he's got ace jack, how many streets of value are going to get from him.
Yeah.
If you show strength right off the bat, he could fold. I mean, there's hands that you could get value from later on the second street that he would fold on the flop if you raise him on the flop. You know what I'm saying? You could get 2 streets of value
Sure, yeah.
instead of raising and only getting that one bet up.
Well, it's kind of like a dance when you're playing poker, and in general, whoever had control of the hand pre-flop is expected to take control post-flop. So that's where it comes in with you. If you had control of the hand pre-flop, you got to bet your sevens. You got to bet your set because otherwise it looks fishy. If you didn't have control of the hand pre-flop, it also looks fishy if you're going to come out and bet.
Yeah,
You're
don't
expected
bet,
to check and then let them bet and call along. And I like your approach as well. Come alive on the turn, make a raise there, because the river bet, you're not going to get the speculation calls. You're not going to get any speculation money. You're only going to get money based upon exactly what they have. Whereas on the turn and the flop, those are your chance to get money based upon speculation. They still have a draw out there. Get money
Right.
where you're way ahead. Whereas the river, if they end up missing everything, it's really easy to fold. It's a lot harder. It's a lot easier for people to make mistakes, overestimating the value of the potential hands that are coming.
Exactly. You're going to make money on the flop and you're going to make money on the turn. And the only time you're going to make money on the river is if they actually have a hand. So the only times you have a better opportunity of making money on the flop and the turn with your set of sevens than you are on the river.
Can I change one thing and
Sure.
get your opinion? Say the flop is ace 10 7, but the 10 and 7 are suited.
I'd still play it the same.
You don't raise there?
No. On the flop? No.
I think a raise there might, on the flop,
Why?
get some value. Maybe he's on a flush draw, maybe he puts
Maybe.
you on a flush draw.
Maybe.
I think it adds
To
more
me,
possibilities.
it would depend upon how many people are in the hand.
Yeah.
If it's heads up, I'd probably be inclined to just call. But if there are like 4 people in the hand
Yeah.
with a flush draw on the board, then I'm going to want to thin the field.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're right. That's a good call.
So
If it's heads up, I'm thinking heads up.
Okay. I was thinking
There's
like
no way.
three-handed. I thought you said call originally. But
Yeah, but
maybe we'll go back to the tape later and listen.
But even heads up, though, would you still raise because it looks like
Potentially.
it looks like a flush draw? It could.
Potentially. I mean, it depends on the opponent. If
Yeah.
the opponent tags you as an aggressive player, I think a raise there is great. Because then it looks like, okay, he's trying to get me out. He's got some sort of drawing hand.
And you're just dreaming they'll come back over the top. And,
Yeah.
But then again, that person has to have some sort of value hand to begin with.
Yeah,
And he might not. And
potentially. But if he doesn't have some sort of value hand, and
Well,
you're not going to be able to get value from him on the flop with a raise, are you going to be able to get value from him on the turn or on the river?
if he's still drawing, you are. And that's what I think that was John's point. If he's drawing to something on the turn, he's still drawing.
And he'll
Yeah.
keep coming.
And he could be, well, I'm going to call this because I still have an opportunity to hit that gutter or hit that flush or whatever it is, and you're going to extract more value. And that's what we're talking about. How do you get the most value out of your hands that you can? Occasionally they're going to hit,
Yeah.
and you're going to lose the hand.
No, of course.
But if you bet them off the hand on the flop and don't get any more money out of them, you're going to sit back and say, God, I could have got it. I might have
Yeah,
could have
but
got some more value out
It's
of it.
going to depend on where you're at in the tournament too. I mean,
Yeah.
how big are the blinds and
Yeah.
everything.
How deep stack
Right.
is everyone,
I mean,
etc.
same exact thing happened to what you're talking about yesterday to me. And if I would, he bet, I raised all in, and he called.
You got a set or
I had a set.
Okay.
I flopped a set. He had ace king of clubs. There was 2 small clubs on, and luckily a 4 came. I paired up, and then he hit his flush. But at that point, there's no other way to do that because the blinds were so big.
Right.
Where it's halfway through the tournament.
Yeah, that's
So
valid
it
point.
really depends on where you're at in the tournament.
But say
Two
more about
bets.
that then. Say more about that then. So like because you were shorter stack, you flop a set, he bets. You felt like let's just end
Yeah,
this here or get paid off here.
Yeah, well, the blinds were pretty big.
Right.
Yeah, are you really
2,000,
doing
I
that
had
for
like-
value or?
But like,
Like
yeah, what's,
18, and he had like a little bit more than me.
were you doing that to
twice.
push him off or to hopefully? I mean, or
he well, we
What was the ship
yeah.
for? Were you intending to get him to fold or intending to get him to call or
Yeah, I wanted him to fold because
because of clubs?
So you're not
Because every chip is so valuable at that point. In the
yeah,
tournament.
at that point,
And that's
just a qualifier,
Right.
so.
But that's a different situation because now you're not actually going for value. You're going to try to get him off the hand,
Right.
so
Or at
he
least make
doesn't
him
suck
pay
out
for.
on you.
At least make him pay for the draw.
Right, make him pay for the draw. Right, you're not actually going for value. So that is a little bit different situation.
Right.
So do you think in that exact same situation? I mean, if you can construct that in your mind, early in the tournament where you each have 100 big blinds,
Oh,
you
I
would
would've played
you
totally
would call
different.
or would you
just
still
call.
raise there?
I would have just called.
So you would let him because you're looking for the implied odds. Just let him keep coming. You don't want to scare him off. But later in the tournament, when it's your life on the
Yeah,
line,
that's what I mean. I mean,
Yep.
it depends on what you consider value in the hand at the time.
Yep.
Right.
but at the end you're in survival mode. Yeah, right. It's you're just trying to survive this hand and this. Okay.
And the hardest hand to see is going to be your trips, and
Yeah.
so you can pretty much see everything else on the board, but the hardest part is seeing those trips and
Yeah.
identifying it as far as somebody's betting and so on. But
Yep. And that could easily look like you're shoving a flush draw there
exactly,
too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Can I twist the situation
Yeah.
one more time?
Twist
All
away.
right. So we have our ace 10 7 board. The 10 and 7 are suited. Rob and I are in the hand. He just called. He didn't raise me. But then the turn comes out and it's another suit connecting with that 10 and 7. Now, how do you feel about things?
I feel fine.
You feel fine?
Yeah,
I feel happy.
I feel fine. I still
Okay.
got a set of sevens.
Okay.
Till my bet gets raised.
Yeah.
Right, and then
Well, right.
And then
I'm checking, hoping you bet,
and I bet.
and then I raise.
Then you raise there?
Yeah,
Okay.
I raise.
That's bold,
what's
I
your
think.
thinking there? Do you want to fold or do you want to call?
No, I want him to call.
Because you're just not afraid of it. Or you know the flush is in the range, but you
Yeah,
can,
there's a
according to
flush
his-
in the range. There's a straight in the range. All that stuff is in his range, obviously, but that doesn't mean he has it.
So you're
I'm playing against the range. Against the range, I'm still way ahead.
But so you're always thinking like that. You're always thinking I'm betting against the range. Yes, the flush, and you're okay. Yes,
Right.
the flush is in the range.
Yep.
But
Yep.
against the broad scope of, there are things in his range that aren't a flush that will
Correct.
call you.
There are things in his range that are not a flush that are going to call me. A flush draw, a straight draw is still going to call me on the turn.
Okay.
See,
Because
I-
they have potential in the range.
I'm less inclined to raise there. The
Yeah.
reason being is the fact that there's a flush on board. If he doesn't have the flush, he's less likely to give me money when I'm ahead. So if he has the flush, he's always putting money in the pot. If he doesn't have the flush, the fact that the board is now 3 flushed means that I'm not going to get as much value from that hand because he's going to be scared of that board as well, or she. I should. But my opponent's going to be just as scared of the board as I am, so I would be less inclined to do the raiser. Not because I'm afraid of the flush per se, but just because I don't think I'm getting as much value
Well, in
from
that
hands
case,
that I beat.
Are you going to get any value on the river anyway?
I think you'll get some value on the river.
You know what I'm
They'll
saying?
probably-
Say I had
Yeah.
ace king in that.
Well,
or not ace king.
It depends on who has the lead here. So we were talking
Right.
about the case. So your heads up in the heads up pot. I'm not gonna fold. I'm not afraid of the flush, but I do think it destroys a lot of the value that I had, which is why like when you have a set, you never want to check the flop because even if the turn doesn't make his hand any better or your hand any better, often it makes the board scarier, which means people are less likely to put money into the pot, so your value hand isn't going to get as much value anymore.
Yeah, I think you lose some of the hands that call you that you beat that you get value from.
Right, well,
like two
and-
pair hands.
And it depends on the dynamic of whether you're the first act
Yeah.
or the second act, or if
Absolutely.
you were the pre-flop raiser or the other person was a pre-flop raiser. That dynamic makes that decision for you.
Right. If I was the raiser on the flop, the board flushes on the turn, I'm gonna still make the bet.
Yes.
I'm not going to
Correct.
check there.
Correct.
But if they make the bet, I'm probably not going to do the check raise.
Well, if you had position on them, if they make the bet, you're still going to make the call.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
You're
I'm
still going to
never
make the
folding.
call. I'm talking a situation where they're the aggressor. I've got the sevens.
Yep.
The third heart comes. I check. They bet. I raise. Because I'm representing a set or the flush. Now, if they happen to have the flush, they're going to come along, and I'm going to find out right then. And if they don't have the flush, they're going to be scared, and I'm not going to get another bet on the river anyway. So the only time I'm going to get any more value out of my set is on that turn.
Well, except the case, how many times are they going to, you check raise them, they fold the turn, now the river comes. If you're out of position, you probably leave the river to make sure you get some value there. And then they might reluctantly call the river. So you are getting that river
Potentially,
call
yes. Yeah, you
that
could. You could.
versus
Yes.
just shutting them out completely on the turn. Now, you're also not giving them a chance to
so
get
it
a
depends.
hand to beat you.
Right. They could have another heart, and all they had to have. If you don't have a heart in your hand, and
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so switching gears again. We're almost out of time, but like, I'm interested in this one too. Okay, you get to see us. You're in the big blind. You get to see for free because we play these tournaments where 7 people limp, and
Yeah.
and we have 6-4 off or some junky hand like that. So we just check and whatever, and the flop comes 6-6-4. What do you just slow play that all the way to death? Like all the way down. I mean, general terms, I know it depends. There's a lot of action, different things that can happen. But in general, do you ever lead out at that, or you just?
No, if I'm in one of the blinds and I hit
I
that,
mean, certainly not right away. You just check. But I mean,
check. Yeah.
throughout the course of the hand, I mean, it feels like you just let people keep betting. But obviously, the more value you can get.
Plus, everybody checked it down the first time around. Then you want to bet
Yeah.
something small, something that hopefully gets somebody to go.
Right.
So you'd maybe lead out.
It
Right
depends
away?
upon
No, not right
Or-
away.
but-
Definitely not.
For me, it
Yeah.
depends upon the position I'm in.
You're
if,
big
if
blind,
I'm last to act,
You're big blind.
You're big blind.
so
Big
I'm
blind.
you're big blind.
I assume there's
Likely
people behind
second
you.
attack.
Because you
Right.
just
Yeah.
saw the flop for free
Yeah.
because you're in a big blind.
Yeah.
You got to check it down and do your.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, then I think
hope
you-
nobody.
Yeah.
But as soon as somebody bets and you call, it just looks so fishy. Like you clearly have a 6 or something.
Not really.
No,
You could have
I
3,
don't think so.
5.
Yeah,
I mean,
or
there's so
something.
many people. Why
You
would
could
you
have ace
speculate?
just a 4.
You could have ace king in big blind, sure.
Yeah, but didn't raise
Pair of
pre-flop.
eights.
I would have raised.
Yeah, true.
But yeah,
you got a margin on like
Yeah,
Jack
but
eight
you
or
could just have
Yeah.
a margin on
Yeah.
hand.
And just calling the.
yeah,
Four.
just
Not believing anybody
Or
else has
deuce.
a hand because nobody raised pre-flop. So what am I worried about on a 6-4-3 flop?
But that's just some of those
Or a
spots
6-6-4
where
flop.
let's just say somebody calls or somebody bets and somebody calls and it comes around to you. I am torn quite a bit between do I just raise here and make it because if I feel like I call, it just looks like I have a 6,
Well,
and
what
maybe
about
that's because that's how I view other people.
Yeah.
What about the other guy that called? What has he got?
yeah.
Well, I don't know. Does
Somebody
he might
bet,
have
another
eights,
guy
But I
called.
mean, he might have like 7s or something. That's
Well,
where I'm like,
that's
fine.
should I be betting here?
You don't want to get rid of him.
Well, but would he go away with 7s?
No.
So my call looks more fishy than what if I just bet at it? I mean, what if I just lead out even right away, making it look like I have 8-4? I hit a 4, and I think, well, that's probably good. I don't know.
What, against 7 people? I don't know.
No, I think you got to check it out.
You got to check that.
You just slow
You
play it
gotta
all
check
the way
it
down,
out.
pretty
Oh,
much.
I know.
I mean, if you were in a different position towards the end or
Right.
at the end, of
Right.
course, you make some sort of bet to try.
In the end, I don't think it matters much. That's not the type of hand that you're going to make your money off.
Right.
No.
No,
I
the
mean-
2 cards change the texture of the board.
But you want, you're waiting for a king or something to come on the board on the turn.
Yeah,
Well, yeah. But that
And-
hand is a lot easier to play than the last hand we talked about.
Oh no, I know it is. Well, is it? But if the question is how do we optimize value? I think
Right.
it's almost as tricky of a hand, or at least I've struggled with it because I always feel like I've left value on the table in those hands. And I go on to win the hand, but I always think,
Well-
how could I have
I
extracted
never
more?
feel bad about that.
No, I would.
Situation.
on
Well,
that
I don't feel bad because I
situation,
won a pot, but I always feel like there probably was more I could have got out of this
How,
somehow.
though? How?
I don't know. That's what you're
Because
the
you're
thing-
going to
well,
scare
that's
anybody
what-
off. That,
Yeah, exactly.
That's the ones
Somebody,
I never think about. I always
Yeah.
think about.
somebody else has to have
Never
some
ended.
sort of value for you to get value from them.
right. But so
And in this situation, everybody limped, so nobody is showing anything.
Mhm.
And one guy bet, another guy, called on the flop. What are you going to get out of them? If you raise now, they're both going to fold because they're speculating.
Mhm.
They're both going to fold. This guy
You
must have a
should
6.
get more money by checking.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Somebody.
but to me, a
one
call
of those
is-
7.
A checking and a call, and then maybe come alive on the turn. If you're afraid that they're just going to check it down on the turn, you maybe throw a bet on a turn, make it look kind of fishy, and they're going to say, "Oh, he doesn't have anything. I'm going to call."
Yeah, I just think the
Yeah,
call,
that's-
the call and flop looks so strong out of that big blind that I check call. with a 6-6-4 flop. I mean, maybe I know that's
what about
my perception could be wrong,
what
but I
about
just
the-
like that was like
what
okay,
about
this
the-
guy's
You let
absolutely-
out there though. My first reaction is, well, you're a big blind and you got a 6.
Well, right,
I'd
and
throw-
everybody shuts down anyway.
Exactly. If you came out
But then
betting,
you
you
get
don't want to
nothing.
do that.
But the pot, if you wait and let someone's going to raise.
Someone's
Maybe,
going
right.
to bet.
But I feel
Yeah.
like
bet.
Someone's going to bet.
Yeah, yeah.
Out of 7 people,
And
Yeah.
if you
There's
call,
always
maybe
someone
you
that-
just had a 4.
Right, but
or
well,
something.
maybe I don't know, but I
You
would
could have,
probably.
you could
two
have
over.
5,
But I feel like if I lead out, it
Right.
makes it
Or,
look
yeah,
like
go
I've
for a
got a 4.
straight.
Like, because people are gonna be like, well, why would he ever bet a 6 there?
Well, somebody
Well-
maybe had an ace-6.
Or you wait
Yeah.
until
Yeah.
there's a straight
Yeah.
or a flush on the board and lead then.
Yeah.
Then it looks like you have that and someone else who
If you're letting them catch up.
spikes a straight or flush.
Right. I don't know.
My thought was raise. If it
Pre-
saves the flop,
on the flop.
yeah. Because what hands are you going to get value from? You can take out a lot of overpairs from their range. I mean, they're not going to have that if they're
Because they
looking at
raise
pre-flop.
pre-flop. Yeah.
But there are a lot of weird hands that people would limp with that kind of connect with this
You know,
flop.
8-7 kind of stuff.
7-8
Yeah.
suited, ace-6. I think is a big one that it is possible, and we would
Mhm.
get a lot of value from ace-6.
People up 5-3.
Yeah,
Yeah.
5-3.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
Ace 4.
yeah,
Yeah, but people
things
are gonna
like
bet
that.
Those. I mean,
Yeah,
I
but-
think somebody's going to bet them for you.
Right. So why would you bet?
Why would you do the bet?
You're
You
going
got
to
Because
get
it-
value now from it.
No,
I mean,
but they're
it looks
going to
like
bet,
a-
so
So
But
You're still gonna
if
get
you
the same
wait,
value.
if you wait and so
He hits the straight.
A6, if they have a 6, there's one case 6 out left on the board. And likely if they weren't in the blind, they have to have an ace with it. That makes only 4 combinations of that hand. There aren't very many combinations that you're going to get value from there. If you wait a little bit and wait for someone to get a straight or a flush, then you could get their whole stack.
Yeah, you're maximizing their whole stack then. It's just
So you're playing,
just
you're
don't-
playing the implied odds at that point.
I don't
Well,
think
yeah,
I
I mean,
can
you're-
get anyone's whole
It's a
stack
limped.
here.
It's a limped pot. You're not going to get a lot of money most of the time. But if you now this goes against the variance thing I was talking about earlier, because most of the time you're not going to get much of anything. But on those one rare perfect situations, you can get someone's stack with almost no risk.
That's kind of what I was looking for in the raise. Weird as it sounds, but I don't think with the limped pot pre-flop, it's just a small pot to begin with. Then if we don't try and increase it, it's always going to stay small for the rest of the streets. My thought was let's bump up the size of the pot so that on future streets we're able to get more value out of it. If they do have one of those hands that's going to stay around.
I'd
you
like
raise
to be in
small
those
enough, that
situations.
might work.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm going to overbet here, but if it's they come out with a 2.5 big blind bet and then it's a call, maybe I go to 7 big blinds, 6 big blinds, something like that. That's going to keep them in, but also is inflating that size of the pot.
yeah, I don't think I'd play it that way.
It's a weird hand.
I would just call and watch what happens on the turn.
For sure.
And I might not get any value on the turn, but then I'm going to come out on the river and hope that somebody caught something and hope they raise me on the river and then jam, right? Because it's that kind of hand where you're like John said, you're most of the time you're going to get nothing.
Yeah, I think that's
So
what
the
happens
only-
most of the time, right?
so-
you hope
if
you get
to-
the guy that limped with queens.
Right,
and
exactly,
jacks,
yeah.
or Whatever.
The under
Exactly.
the under the gun guy.
Exactly.
People limp with aces and
Yeah,
kings.
the under the
Yep.
gun guy who expected her to be a raise.
Good
Yeah.
situation.
well, remember you're picking up 7 limpers too, so
Right.
There's a pot
you
there.
do have some value there. So
Well, there's some people that could have hands that have value, but they haven't made that value. They
Yeah.
haven't made the maximum value
Right.
yet. So you could blow them off of that, and if you blow them off of that and don't allow them to hit their flush or their straight, which you have crushed, you're losing out on that potential value that you would have had.
But I don't think they're folding as much of their range as you're kind of implying. They're not going to.
They will. They're going to say, "Oh, that guy's got a 6. I'm out here."
But if you lead out, see that's where I wonder if leading out, because who leads out a 6? It looks like I have a 4, or it looks like I have pocket 3s or pocket 2s. I mean, if I was playing against somebody and that flop came and the big blind let out, I would never put them on a 6 because of all the reasons you're just saying.
Yeah.
So my king queen, I might say, well, let's just see what happens on the turn, or that's where you can build a pot. So I totally get you don't want to push people off of stuff, But you also disguise
You
your hand a
always
little bit by
conceal your
betting.
hand a lot more if you check. I mean,
If
Yep.
you check, see, I think you disguise it more if you bet.
I don't.
This is
I mean, you don't get in those situations very often, but
No.
every time I have been and it's made it to the river, people are like, "Wow, I had no idea you had that," and I've done the same thing. With
Yeah.
people. I had no idea you had that.
Yeah, I just when it happened to me, then it's just and I'm collecting, the check down pot, or with the one bet in there, it just doesn't add up to much usually.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just what it is.
Yeah,
What it is, you just
yeah.
fuck a monster, you don't get paid. But
Every now and then,
Yeah, if you check it though,
somebody
you're
goes crazy.
gonna get a bet from somebody that has that king queen. Because they're gonna say, "Well, no, everybody must have missed
Right,
this."
you get
someone-
one bet, and then when you call,
Yeah,
it's
but
like,
if you bet, you might not get anything out of it.
maybe, but
I'm just saying.
yeah, no, I don't. I know that this is the argument. It's the
It
balance.
depends.
It's the balance. Of, do I
I
just
would
slow
not
play
bet.
for the off chance that somebody
I would
hits that
not bet.
flush or straight, or do I try to get, do I get more regular value that's smaller, or do I do the implied odds thing and
I
get
think
no
what-
value and then once in a while I get the stack?
What John said made a lot of sense because
First time ever.
Really?
no,
It's
because
recorded.
he's talking about getting the maximum value from that hand. And how do you do that? You allow somebody else to make a big hand. And if you blow them off by betting out, some people are gonna fold that stuff because they're just tight anyway.
Yeah.
They're really tight. But they might stay in for one bet. If somebody else bets, you just call along.
Right.
Just limping along, just having some fun. Everybody's a family pot. We're having a good time here. Let's see what the cards come out, and then jam on them on the river, and they got a big hand. They're coming along. But if you get frisky right away, you're going to blow everybody away, and you're not going to have that opportunity, and you're not going to make a big hand.
I think more times than not, anyways.
Exactly.
Taylor did make a good point though, in that.
Check one for me too.
Oh,
Well, so okay, let's say we have 7 limpers in the pot, so there's 7 big blinds in there. We check it all the way down to the river. Now someone has made whatever they've made. If you're in early position, you almost have to bet because you
Right, you need
can't
value.
expect someone's going to do it. You're going to bet pot 7 big blinds. You win 7 more big blinds out of the hand. Now, let's say you come out and you choose to check the flop. Turn comes around, no one bets, so you just throw a bet out there. 1 big blind. Now you get four more callers. Now you've got 11 big blinds in the pot.
Well,
Now on the river.
I bet out on the
on
turn.
the turn, you
Yeah,
definitely
If it checks
bet.
around, I bet
I'm
out
talking
on the
about
turn
on
every
the-
time.
On the flop.
Yeah.
On the flop.
Yeah.
On the turn, you've got to bet. We already
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, everybody's probably going to check.
You have
it
to
out.
have
Yeah,
some
it's a
money in
garbage
there
card.
so that
Right.
there's money to
Right.
win for them to call when you make your bet. When they make their hand.
Yeah, but I check the flop, but if it checks around, I definitely bet the turn.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. You need to try to get some money in the pot.
Can I go back to one of the very first points that John made today when he was talking about how do we get value, and he said his approach differs between cash games and tournaments. Cash games, he's willing to go for that higher expected value but higher variance play. In tournaments, you might be willing to go for the lower expected value, lower variance. Would you consider a raise on the flop there to be in that cash game type mentality where it may be higher variance because they're more likely to fold, but also you're getting more value out of your hand?
It really depends. It depends upon who you're playing with, but a lot of times in cash games, if the situation doesn't look good to people, they'll just fold and move along. Because there's, in a tournament, when you've invested chips on there, there's a lot more like emotional baggage tied to that, because those chips are your life's blood. You know, you can always reach into your pocket and pull out more cash and keep playing a cash game. But in a tournament, those chips have a lot more value. So, I think if you were to raise in a cash game situation, you'd be more likely to get people to fold because, you know, that board can't be that good for them. And if they do happen to get something good, you might have something better. Whereas in a tournament, if they think there's a chance that they're going to be able to get those chips in the end, I don't know. I've seen people make a lot more weird plays in tournaments than I have in cash games.
Fair enough.
Really? Total opposite around here.
Well, any final comments, or we'll wrap up? Any other points you want to make?
I had one other question about I don't know how fast we can attack it.
It's fine.
And we know the answer is it depends, but what's the thought of how to maximize when you're chasing your straights and flushes? Do you try to get money in early so when you hit, you get paid off? Or if you're always doing that, in the long run, does that really pay off because of the amount of time you hit? Or do you take a free card if you can get it? When would it matter and how?
You've stumped
Or,
your-
or, or, are you
Yeah.
trying?
I
Are you trying to bet so that
Pot small.
so you don't even have to
Small
make the
as
straight or
possible.
flush,
Yeah.
and you actually get the pot before you didn't have to
But
make
that-
it because you might not
That's
make it a
another
lot of
thought,
times.
too.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, you're only going to make it. Whatever.
There's
But
a
I
couple
30,
scenarios I think that happen here. On the flop, you hit your open-ended straight draw, whatever. You got an open-ended straight draw. A lot of times, if there's a number of people in the pot, I might raise right then and there to thin the field a little bit. And by raising, if I'm in position, I'm going to get everybody checking to me, and now I can get a free turn card.
2 for 1.
So that's a kind of a, you throw an extra bet out there just to get that.
Why do you want to thin the...
Well, not thin the field necessarily, but take out the people that are going to pay you off in the river are going to have a value hand, right? So if you put that raise in right now, you're getting more money into the pot, and you're allowing yourself to potentially get a free turn card if you don't hit the turn, or a free river card if you don't hit the turn.
So
Right?
does that mean you'd bet smaller because you want to build the pot but keep people in?
I want to build the pot, and yeah, I would keep people. The only people I'm keeping in are people that have value to start with, right?
Yeah.
So that's the people I want in, because those are the ones I'm going to get money out of. So I'm not going to necessarily. I don't want to have to face a turn bet, a big turn bet, when I'm sitting there with my draw, because now do I have the odds to call that turn bet? Whereas I'm doing two things here. I'm putting more money into the pot potentially, but I'm also potentially winning it right then and there. So now you're it's a semi bluff.
Well,
Right?
that's how I think about it. Like if I'm going to bet my draws, I'm thinking, well, now I got two ways to win. I mean,
Right.
you've got fold equity,
Yep.
so you can
Yep.
win the hand that way. You can also win if it hits.
Yep.
But you're building a bigger pot with Jack High.
Potentially,
You know, I mean,
or you're
there's
winning
that
the pot right then and there.
Right. No, I know. Yeah.
Which is not you're not maximizing value because you really don't have value yet. You have equity, but you don't have value yet. So in that type, you're doing a semi bluff by raising the.
So in
raising the flop.
general, betting draws versus taking free cards. Yeah, what's the most profitable?
Well, if you look at it, I mean, from a mathematical point of view, if you have the right number of callers, it doesn't matter. So let's say your draw is 5-1 to hit. If you have 5 callers in the pot, you can bet all day
You're
long, and it
getting the
doesn't
odds
change
Right.
your value in the end. In general, you're not going to get the right number of callers. So the only reasonable reason to bet is because either you're very sure they will call you when it does come in, so you can realize your equity later, or you think they're going to fold.
Mm-hmm.
And there's enough of percentage of the time that they fold, and you get more money when you do hit it, that it makes you value in the long term.
So you're saying you would raise the flop also?
If I think there's a decent chance that I have fold equity there, I would.
Yeah.
If I think there's no fold equity, I wouldn't.
I think the number one factor here for me is stack size. If I'm deep stacked, I'm more likely to call and try and hit my card. If I'm shorter stacked, I'm more likely to raise and try and get it all in there, realize my equity right there.
Well, if I'm less than 20, I'm gonna jam all day long.
Yeah.
There, but if I'm deep stack, that's when I'm going to raise to try to just take it down right then. Because if I'm in that 20 to 30 range, that's when I want the free card. Because
Yeah.
I don't have enough.
Maybe
I don't
it's
have
kind
enough,
of like a...
Yeah, I don't have enough chips to start messing around and playing around if somebody calls back on me. If I raise and somebody calls back, and all of a sudden I got to hit now because I'm really wasting a bunch of chips. Whereas if I got 100 big blinds, it's now I'm going to raise, try to take it down right now, and if I don't, I've still got a lot of equity, and I got a lot of chips. So
So your answer is What did you take out of that?
So what are you gonna do next time,
Yeah.
Stacy?
What did you take out of that? Did that help? Was that help? What did you take out of
I'll
that?
have to process it some more.
Yeah.
I think a lot will depend on, if I'm at a position where I try to think ahead, like we were talking about. What if he comes back over the top of me? Now, if I just got a fold there, then I might have to consider that player. Or if I know the guy's played with him 8 tournaments,
Right.
he never comes over the top. Well, then I'll be more likely to do
Right.
something. Or
And there's something to that too. I mean, if people know you always bet your draws, that's predictable. You might be subject to a re-raise then. But if you're playing with people you don't know and you've been showing down big made hands, and you bet, I mean, your fold equity goes up.
Yeah.
Depending on the type of player you're against too, so you can maybe get away with betting your draws a little bit more.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, are you against people that like to re-raise? That's a question. When I'm playing well, I'm thinking about that. Like, who at this table is just waiting to re-raise me? So when you bet your draw and then they ship on you, you're like, well, besides Rob. No, I mean, that is where the depends comes in. But I think it's a cool question, sort of long-term betting draws versus taking free cards. What pays off more? Yeah.
Also depends where you are in a tournament too. Are you willing to give up those chips to bet?
Yeah.
You know? Are you right at about cusp of the bubble, or aren't you? Right.
Yeah.
So
is it a good investment in the grand scheme of the tournament?
Exactly. So
Right.
whether it's money or a tournament, are you willing to risk that?
Mm-hmm. Well, good. Well, let's wrap up unless any other questions or comments, last words. All right. Thanks, everybody. All right. Well, thanks, everybody, for joining us again for the Rec Poker Podcast. Next week, we're going to be hearing from World Series of Poker bracelet winner John Redding as he shares a little bit about his story and some of his big scores, and we talk a little bit of strategy as well. So join in next week. As always, you can find us on Facebook. We've got a group called Rec Poker, and also Twitter. Follow @RecPoker to stay current on all that we are talking about. And if you didn't catch it, we are doing a virtual book study on Jonathan Little's book on Tournament Poker, Volume 1. So if you want details on that, let me know. We'd love to have more people involved in that thing. We're going to be doing a virtual book club. I'll be recording some things, and then eventually we will release that into the Rec Poker Podcast once the entire book study is done. We'll do it over several weeks, and you can certainly listen in then. So with that, feel free to reach out if you have any questions, comments, concern, or feedback. Take care.